Welcome back. Welcome back to Master Your Ash. I'm your host, Michael Prisdale, and today I would like to run through my best cigars of 2022. This is a list that, just like most best of 2022 lists, that is completely subjective to myself, and I did things slightly differently this year than in years past. If you'd like to go and revisit my list from last year, 2021, I will link that in the video above. I'll also link my mid-year list that I did about 6 months ago, just to kind of encompass and combine all of the cigars that I had from the beginning of the year and how we have moved through that list and added some things, subtracted some cigars, so on and so forth throughout the year. But first, I'd like to start by opening up a bottle of bubbles and lighting a cigar. Cheers, everybody. Happy 2022, and let's dive into the best of 2022. To preface the best of 2022 list, I just want to say that I did things a little bit differently than I did last year. So this year, I've basically taken all of the cigars that are 54 ring gauge and above, so 54 plus in ring gauge, and I've separated them from those that are below 54 ring gauge. So we're going to actually have two lists here, top fives in each category, along with an honorable mention for each category. I'm going to start off with the cigars that are below 54 ring gauge, and then we'll get into the big boys. So for honorable mentions on our below 54 ring gauge, I wanted to mention the Blackwork Studio Killer Bee Connecticut cigar. And you probably saw in the thumbnail image the Blackwork Studio Killer Bee Shaolin, which I also reviewed. I think that the Shaolin and the Killer Bee Connecticut are both fantastic cigars for what they are. I think that they're interchangeable in this honorable mentions list, and I just wanted to point those out as an honorable mention. And that's, I didn't have any more Connecticut's that I could film for the thumbnail, so because I smoked them all. But one of the reasons why the Killer Bee Connecticut got it over the Shaolin is specifically because of the fact that the Connecticut is a little bit more readily available than the Shaolin. However, if you can come across the Shaolin, both interchangeable in that honorable mention category. Number 5. The number 5 cigar of the year for me was the Crowned Heads La Carême. And the La Carême was just a fantastic cigar, ton of great confectionery notes off of it. I feel like John Huber and Crowned Heads, they produced so many fantastic cigars. It was very hard for me to choose one that could be on the list. I could have probably have made the list with multiple cigars coming from Crowned Heads this year. The La Carême just spoke to me in a completely different way. It was by far the best confectionery cigar that I had all year long. It was simply phenomenal. The way that it balanced this chocolate brownie, vanilla cream, tons of marzipan, and just other confectionery notes, rich molasses notes to it as well, and the pepper and the spice were there, they were present. It just was more so a confectionery, sweeter, smoother style cigar, and fantastic offering from Crowned Heads. Number 4 in the under 54 ring gauge category for this year is the Warped Chinchalle. And not only is Chinchalle just a fun one to say, but it was my favorite Warped cigar that I had smoked this year. There are other Warped cigars out there, I know. Some of them are very highly acclaimed. And I look forward in 2023 to exploring this brand more and more. I feel as though that only having the Eagle's Descent and the Skyflower, along with the, I believe it's the La Hacienda, or La Hacienda, one of those, from Warped, and the Matilde line, which is in collaboration with another factory. I think that Warped Chinchalle is just so good as far as the flavor notes on it, the construction and burn quality. There's so many fantastic things about this cigar at such an amazing price point, under $15, that so many people, I feel, need to be exposed to this cigar. They need to go out there and seek it out. It is a fantastic cigar. Number 3 in my cigars of the year for 2022 is the Ozgener family Bosphorus B50. Now, Cigar Hound Dog was nice enough to send me over the B54, I believe it was, which could very well make a case for itself on anybody's list. I think that any size in the Ozgener Bosphorus line could make some lists this year. It's such a phenomenal cigar blend. It has this amazing confectionery note to it, but then it balances out all of these great kind of citrus notes, nutty components, earthy mineral notes, and barnyard notes. It's truly one of those cigars that stretches the full flavor wheel and is capable of pairing with a multitude of different things, which I love. And I thought that at the price point that it was offered at and the availability, the Ozgener Bosphorus B50, just one of those cigars that has to be on the list, and I gave it the number 3 rating. Number 2 in the under 54 ring gauge category is the Olmec, Claro or Maduro in Toro. And the reason for the Olmec, Claro, Maduro, Toro being number 2 is simply because of the fact that although Foundation produces a number of cigars that are very highly acclaimed throughout the year, I felt as though this one stood head and shoulders above them all. I thought that this was such an under the radar, just simple release that Foundation did, and Nick Melillo deserves his flowers. He deserves his credit for putting together such an amazing blend, offering it at a great price point. And in the Maduro and the Claro, they were almost indiscernible with how good they both were. That's tough to do. It's tough to make 2 completely different blends and have both of them be phenomenal. So I wanted to present the number 2 cigar of the year in the under 54 ring gauge to Foundation and say that the Olmec, Claro, or Maduro, interchangeable in that Toro format, are simply fantastic cigars. That brings us to number 1. And number 1, which I think went underappreciated and below a lot of people's radar this year, is the 1502 Aniversario 10-year cigar, courtesy of 1502 and Global Premium Imports. Such a phenomenal cigar. It hit on so many notes for me. It was just so well-rounded, so versatile in its blend. I felt as though that the 1502 Aniversario 10 year is just one of those cigars that it completely captivates you. It stops you from paying attention to anything other than smoking that cigar and enjoying it. Moving into the 54 and above ring gauge, the honorable mention for this year is the Atabey Duendes. And the Atabey Duendes, honorable mention because of the fact that it was my first experience smoking an Atabey, and I'd just like to thank EKB for sending that cigar out to the channel. I thought that it was absolutely phenomenal. I know that the Byron line, I know that Atabey just in general, their marketing and their price point, it's tough for a lot of people to kind of comprehend that don't smoke cigars in that echelon of price. But I thought that it was so good. It reminded me of this Cuban-esque smoking experience, but something that you could get in the US without having to jump through hoops and just totally enjoy. It's fantastic smoke, so I gave the honorable mention to the Atabey Duendes, and thank you to EKB for sending that out to the channel. Number 5 was the Cavalier LE 2022. And Sebastian and Brian over at Cavalier, the whole entire team at Cavalier, deserves a lot of credit for putting together such a fantastic cigar. It was by far my favorite Cavalier. It was like buttery, rich, creamy notes all throughout with a little tiny hint of spice, and it just was such a phenomenal cigar to smoke in that format. I absolutely adored it. Number 4 was a returning one from our mid-year review. It held on the list. It moved down a couple of spots, but the Davidoff Winston Churchill LE 2022 makes its comeback, and it maintains a really formidable spot and a really great showing from this Davidoff. It was my favorite Davidoff this year. I thought that it was simply fantastic, and the walnut, just the creamy, nutty components mixed in with all of this blend, and the fact that it was in this Winston Churchill size format, unlike the late hours that were in more traditional Vitola sizes, was simply phenomenal. I think that this is worthy of the number 4 spot for the cigars of the best cigars of 2022. Moving into the number 3 spot, another returning cigar from earlier in this year is our Plasencia Year of the Tiger. And this cigar to me is a no-brainer. It is a box-worthy smoke. It is one of the best cigars that I have come across this whole entire year. It is so deserving of the number 3 spot, and I just can't wait to see what Plasencia continues to deliver year after year. They seem to put together such phenomenal cigars. The number 2 cigar of the year deserves another little helping of champagne. Or sparkling wine from California. The number 2 cigar of the year comes to us courtesy of Mr. Steve Saka, and that was the Mi Querida Black SakaKhan. I felt as though that dollar for dollar, pound for pound, this was one of those cigars out there that you just could not miss. It delivers so much flavor, so much nuance. It stretches the full gamut of what a cigar that has this profile can become and can be if it's blended to the utmost perfection. And I felt as though that Steve Saka completely nailed it with this blend. It is my favorite Steve Saka cigar, I think, that I have ever smoked. And that's including some of the stuff that I had back in the day from Drew Estate, like the L40 Lancero. So the Mi Querida, Black SakaKhan, Steve Saka, man, you knocked this out of the park, and I just want to let you know that this is phenomenal to me. And finally, the #1 cigar in the above 54 ring gauge category is none other than the Lampert Don Padron, and it is in the Salamones, which this is the Toro variation of it, courtesy of Cigar Hound Dog. Thank you for sending that into the channel, brother. Really appreciate having another one of these to smoke. But I reviewed the Salamones, which I'm going to post the little cut screen of right now. And the Salamones to me was just, for a $30 cigar, such an amazing value. It had all of the flavor of the Atabey Duendes. It had the Cuban-esque profile. It had the beautiful notes from the Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper on it. It had from the Connecticut shade wrapper on it. It had all of this flavor, stretched the full gamut of the flavor wheel. And it was an absolutely enormous smoke, which, you know, for those of you out there that appreciate spending the extra money and getting some extra time on stick, along with having a full flavor and a full, complete spectrum, to pair up your scotches, your whiskeys, your cognacs, your champagnes, your coffees, your sodas, whatever it is, that cigar can pair with almost anything, and it's going to be phenomenal. So I wanted to say cheers to Lampert, shout out to Vlad and to everybody on the team there, Stefan. They do such a phenomenal job, and I feel as though that this is one of the best offerings that I have ever had, especially from the Lampert crew. It's simply phenomenal. I can't wait to smoke the Toro and actually review the Toro, because I'm sure it's going to be just as good, if not maybe even a little bit better, with you know, a little bit shorter of a time window than the Salamones even was. I would just like to say that I hope that you all have a happy and healthy and very safe end of 2022, and I hope that you all have a great start to the new year in 2023. I'd like to thank you all so very much for liking, commenting, subscribing, commenting, continuing to help grow this community here at Master Your Ash. It means the world to me, and I look forward to catching you all for 2023 for a brand new best cigars of next year. So thank you all so very much. I look forward to seeing you all soon.